The Galactic Corrections Facility, colloquially known as the Brink, sat on the icy, uninhabitable moon of RYN-12. It was the galaxy's toughest maximum security prison, housing the universe's worst criminals, warlords, assassins, pirates, and mercenaries from countless species. The inmates were notorious, their criminal exploits spanning entire star systems, and their combined list of felonies filled libraries. They were powerful, violent, and above all, dangerous. But the Brink held another secret that no inmate could ever forget: the prison guards were all human. Initially, other species had filled those roles. The Galactic Council had sent strong and resilient guards from across the galaxy's Zelorths, with their rock-like skin, Merotians, known for their agility and enhanced reflexes, even the towering Zalaks, a species whose strength alone was usually enough to cow any prisoner. And yet, none lasted long. The problem was simple: prisoners kept finding ways to exploit these guards' weaknesses. The Zelorths, while strong, were vulnerable to certain frequencies that could stun them in seconds. Merotians, despite their speed, were easily distracted, and the Zalaks, for all their size, were slow and predictable. No species had the tenacity, the mental resilience, or the physical adaptability to survive the relentless cunning of the Brink's inmates. Then, in a moment of desperation, the Galactic Council turned to humanity. Earth was a classified deathworld, with a reputation for hostile environments and ferocious predators. Human adaptability and tenacity had earned them a grudging respect in certain circles. And thus, the Council recruited their first batch of human guards, unsure of what to expect. The results were staggering. Within weeks, order returned to the Brink. It was hard to pinpoint exactly what unnerved the inmates most about the humans. For some, it was the humans' watchfulness; for others, their unbreakable resolve. But the inmates all shared one universal experience: no one could get under a human guard's skin. Take, for instance, K.A. an infamous enforcer from the Garkill Syndicate, whose claim to fame was his ability to intimidate anyone with his 8-foot, 3-armed frame. K.A. tried every trick in the book on his new guard, Officer Sullivan, a broad-shouldered, unassuming human with tired eyes. One day, K.A. leaned in close, flexing his muscles, and growled, "Human, do you know what I could do to you with a flick of my claw?" Sullivan didn't even flinch. "Yeah, maybe. But then I'd have to fill out a mountain of paperwork, and frankly, I'd rather not." K.A. tried snarling, hissing, even threatening Sullivan's family. Sullivan barely looked up from his tablet, idly scrolling through his shift notes. After weeks of failed attempts, K.A. finally snapped. "What's wrong with you?" he bellowed, his voice echoing down the cell block. "Why don't you fear me?" Sullivan looked up, his gaze calm but piercing. "Where I come from, people try to mug you in broad daylight. Nature throws tornadoes, earthquakes, and wild animals at you for fun. My grandmother got bit by a venomous snake once and walked 3 miles to the hospital just so she wouldn't miss lunch. You're just not that scary." For the first time, K.A. had nothing to say. The other inmates, who'd been watching with morbid curiosity, exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't normal. Another infamous inmate, Lorlan the Spectre, a thief with psychic abilities that could manipulate emotions, thought she'd found a loophole. Lorlan specialized in mental domination, exploiting weaknesses, insecurities, and primal fears. She could see into her target's mind, coaxing out their darkest secrets and bending them to her will. She'd done it to countless guards before. When her new human guard, Officer Patel, came to deliver her food, she locked eyes with him, reaching out with her mind to find his fears. But what she found in Patel's mind was nothing she could work with. Patel had faced fear all his life: fear of failure, fear of loss, fear of the unknown. But he'd come out the other side stronger. He had known real hardship, and had learned to live with it. Her attempts to manipulate him slid off like water off a stone. He simply acknowledged his fears, accepted them, and moved on. "I know what you're trying to do," Patel said calmly, as he placed her food tray down. "But it won't work. My nightmares are worse than you'll ever be." Lorlan retreated, rattled and visibly shaken. She'd never encountered a mind that faced its fears so openly, and she wasn't sure how to counter it. In the days that followed, she avoided Patel's gaze altogether. The most notorious inmate of all, however, was Kranath, a creature of pure muscle and fury from the Hellas system. With skin tougher than most metals and a resistance to stun weapons, Kranath had single-handedly brought down whole starships in his prime. No guard had ever dared enter his cell without a backup team. Except, of course, for the humans. One day, Officer Morales, a no-nonsense guard from Puerto Rico, strolled into Kranath's cell alone to deliver a routine check. Kranath looked up, his eyes gleaming with the promise of violence. "Are you not afraid of me?" Kranath growled, baring his razor-sharp teeth. "Do you know how easily I could crush you?" Morales raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Buddy, I was one of 6 siblings growing up. You know what happens when you don't fight for the last piece of pizza in a family that big? You starve." Kranath blinked, momentarily thrown off. "What? What is pizza?" "Oh, man. It's amazing," Morales replied, as if talking to a buddy over a drink. "Cheese, sauce, a little bit of everything that'll clog your arteries faster than you can say Galactic Council regulations." Inmates from the surrounding cells leaned closer, listening in as Morales described pizza in mouth-watering detail, completely ignoring Kranath's bared teeth and dangerous posture. By the end, Kranath, though utterly bewildered by the whole experience, had forgotten about crushing Morales entirely. He sat there, intrigued by tales of a food that sounded oddly comforting. Over the next week, Kranath would pepper Morales with questions about Earth food, distracted from his usual rage by this strange human guard who treated him more like an acquaintance than a monster. The human guards weren't stronger than their predecessors, nor were they faster. They didn't rely on advanced tech or intricate strategies. What they had was something no other species in the galaxy could match: a lifetime of enduring life on a death world. The guards had grown up surrounded by hazards both natural and human-made that had forged them into resilient, adaptable, and unshakable beings. They couldn't be intimidated, because they'd seen worse. They couldn't be manipulated, because they knew the value of staying grounded. And they couldn't be broken, because human survival on Earth had always meant taking on challenges that other species simply couldn't understand. Eventually, the Galactic Council made it official: human guards would be standard in all high-risk prisons. No one else could handle it. Inmates across the galaxy soon learned that there was no breaking a human guard. No tricks, no threats, no amount of strength or psychic prowess could move them. If they said you stayed in your cell, you stayed in your cell. If they said lights out, it was lights out. The prisoners called them the Unbreakables. And while many would still try to get under the human skin, not one had ever succeeded. Because on a death world, you either learned to face what scared you or you didn't survive at all.